Good afternoon and welcome to the fourth and final session of the Hunting Basics webinar series that has been brought to you by MSU Extension and the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. My name is Katie Oger and I am a chronic wasting disease educator with Michigan State University Extension. And today I am so happy to welcome Holly Vaughn, who is the Public Outreach and Engagement Unit Manager at the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. And just as a reminder, MSU programs are open to all without regard to anything that is listed on the slide. So we welcome everybody and hope that everybody gets a chance to learn from our programs. So with that, I will turn it over to Holly to start sharing her screen. And in the meantime, as the presentation goes on, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw those in the Q&A chat pod. And at the conclusion of Holly's presentation, we'll go ahead and field all of those questions. So Holly, I will turn it over to you.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So today we're going to talk about deer hunting regulations and specifically regulations for this year, but also the basic regulations that you need to know before you head out into the field this fall. So I am as Katie mentioned, the Public Outreach and Engagement Unit Manager. Our unit creates the hunting digests, which we'll be referring to today. We do the design work and help pull content together with our policy and regulations unit. We also manage the website. We do educational programming. We do a lot of outreach with the public, and we facilitate a podcast. So we do a lot of kind of telling the story of the Wildlife Division. So the 2021 Deer Hunting Digest is available online to you at michigan.gov/DNR Digest. The really cool thing about accessing this digest online is that you can download the full digest to your mobile device. You can save it to, if you're on an Apple device, you can save it to books, or you can save it to Kindle, or you can save it lots of different places to your mobile device. And you can access the digest without an internet connection. So it's really handy to have it at your fingertips on your phone. I download all of the Michigan Hunting Digest because I refer to them so often, at work and outside work. So I have them on my phone at all times so I can access them anywhere. Now, if you prefer a hard copy, that's fine. A lot of people do. We do have limited quantities available at DNR customer service centers and also at agents that sell licenses. So you can find those, at your local Meijer or your local bait and tackle shop or a DNR customer service center. It's 80 pages long. Now, not every single page has information that you'll need to know as a deer hunter, but there's a lot of content. There's a lot to know. We're going to go over kind of the high points today, but we won't cover every single regulation that's contained in the digest because that would take probably, a full day. So the Michigan Hunting Digest contains deer and small game regulations and also general hunting regulations that people need to know before they head out into the field. Generally, the Michigan Hunting Digest is released in mid to late summer. Deer regulations are often finalized in the spring and sometimes into the summer of each year. So this digest usually becomes available anywhere between July and sometimes September if it's a really late regulation year. Luckily this year, this digest hit stores in July, so you should be able to find it near you at this time. And it is online as well. So let's start with, what do you need to know in order to actually go hunting? Well, hunters here in Michigan, if they were born on or after January 1st, must have taken hunter safety in order to go out into the field and purchase their license and hunt. However, we do have an opportunity for those of you who may want to try hunting on for size and see if it's something that you want to commit to taking a hunter safety course and, you know, doing that work. It's called the apprentice license. It can be purchased for 2 years before you actually take the hunter safety course. If you do hunt on an apprentice license, you'll need to go hunting with someone 21 years of age or older who has the same hunting licenses as you. And that person can kind of act as a guide and mentor and help you learn the art of hunting before you commit to taking a hunter safety course. Now, some people are more comfortable taking hunter safety before they go out in the field. That's perfectly fine and recommended. So hunter safety courses can take, they're usually about 2 days long if you take the full course, and they're offered at a lot of conservation clubs, you know, community centers, sometimes even at stores like Jay's or Bass Pro. So hunter safety courses are available in person. Usually it's a 2-day commitment, or you can take the course online. And this is what I did when I got my hunter safety certificate. The online course takes probably about, gosh, I don't even remember, probably somewhere between 6 and 8 hours to complete the coursework online. And then you take an in-person field day course where you'll take your hunter safety exam. You'll get some practice actually handling a firearm. And that field day course is about 3 to 4 hours. So you need to have your online course and then also a field day course. But this is an option for folks that like kind of a more self-directed approach to learning hunter safety. All that information can be found at michigan.gov/hunter-education if you want to read a little bit more about hunter safety certification. We have several different deer hunting seasons in the state. 2 of them have already passed this year, the Liberty Hunt. The Liberty Hunt is a youth hunt, and it's also for hunters with health challenges, qualifying disabilities. It's a public and private land hunt. It is a firearm hunt, and it's in early September, usually September, the second weekend in September. This year it was the 11th and 12th. Then we have the early antlerless firearm season. That's a private land firearm season from September 18th to 19th each year. The Independence Hunt is another hunt for hunters with qualifying disabilities. It's from October 14th through 17th. It's primarily a private land firearm hunt, but there are a few public lands that are open to the Independence Hunt as well with a permit. The archery hunting season starts on Friday. It runs from October 1st through November 14th, and then again resumes after the firearm season, December 1st through January 1st. During the archery season, of course, no firearms are able to be used, of course, for hunting deer. You can use a crossbow. In the late season, December 1st through January 1st, no crossbows are allowed in the Upper Peninsula, but in the Lower Peninsula, you can use a crossbow during the late archery season. The regular firearm season is the time when most hunters head to the woods. It's when we have the most folks out and about doing their hunting for the year. That season runs from November 15th through 30th. You can use archery equipment and crossbows during the firearm season if you prefer to hunt with a bow or a crossbow. And then we have some late seasons, the muzzleloader deer season for black powder weapons. That runs from December 3rd through 12th. Now, if you hunt in Zone 3, and I'm going to skip ahead a few slides to Zone 3. So our state is divided into 3 hunting zones. Zone 1 is the Upper Peninsula. Zone 2 is kind of the tip of the mitt to mid-Michigan. And then Zone 3 is from mid-Michigan down. If you're in Zone 3 during the muzzle loading season, you can use any legal firearm for this area. And we'll talk about legal firearms for this area in a few minutes. So during that muzzleloading season in Zone 3, you can use any legal firearm for that zone during the muzzleloading season. And then finally, we have a late antlerless firearm season, which runs from December 13th to January 1st. And this is a private land only hunt. And again, archery equipment is fine during this firearm hunt as well. Actually, you can use archery equipment during any firearm season if that's what you prefer. One other season that isn't on this chart is the late archery urban hunt, which runs from January 1st through January 31st. And that's in Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne counties. So the Tri-County area around Metro Detroit. And so that hunt is an archery only hunt on public lands and some private lands, although a lot of places in Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne counties are not open to hunting. So you'll want to check with your local municipality to see if hunting is available in your city or township. I live in Warren here in Macomb County, and there's no hunting in Warren, but if you go up north in Macomb County to Bruce Township, Ray Township, there are some hunting opportunities up there. So just kind of depends on where you live in those three areas where hunting might be available for you on public or private lands in those areas. Licenses, what kind of licenses do you need to get out and deer hunt? Well, first of all, you need a base license. For most folks, a base license is $11. And that base license is allows you to hunt small game as well. So you need that base license in order to hunt, and then you get to make a choice. Are you going to grab a deer license or a deer combination license or deer combo license? So a deer license allows you to take one buck. If you think that's probably all you're going to take or all you're going to want to hunt is one buck, then the deer license is for you. Grab a deer license and you're all set for the season. If you'd prefer the option to be able to harvest 2 bucks, you can grab the combo license. That's $40 and it gives you 2 tags to harvest antlered deer. I should mention that once you've purchased the deer license, you can't return it for a deer combination license. So if you get 1 buck and you think, oh man, I'd really like to take another buck, unfortunately, you're done purchasing your regular deer licenses for the year. You can't go back in and purchase another deer license or a combo license at that point. You could, however, purchase an antlerless deer license for an opportunity to harvest a doe or a deer with antlers shorter than 3 inches long. So a button buck or a little spike with antlers shorter than 3 inches. That option would be available to you as well. We actually do encourage people to harvest does because does really are the drivers of the deer population here in Michigan. So the antlerless deer license has changed a little bit this year. We now have a universal antlerless license that can be used across deer management units. This is a new thing. It used to be that when you purchased your antlerless deer license, you could only use it in the deer management unit. So all these little numbers here denote a deer management unit. You could only use your antlerless permit in the DMU where you bought that permit for. So you were kind of limited in where you could harvest a deer. That has changed. In the entire lower peninsula and in the green areas here in the upper peninsula, you can move across DMUs. You can hunt various areas with your antlerless license. So that gives you a lot of opportunity to be able to harvest a doe in the state. The purchase limit for antlerless licenses is 10. Now, very few people harvest 10 antlerless deer, and very few people actually purchase 10 antlerless deer licenses. But you do have that option if you have a property, maybe with a farm where you have a lot of deer coming in, you have that option to harvest up to 10 antlerless deer. Now, if you're in this purple zone here in the Upper Peninsula, you need an additional permit to use with your universal antlerless license to be able to hunt. This is a part of the state that sometimes gets a lot of snowfall. So we wanted the flexibility to be able to open or close these deer management units. These two, we've turned these into kind of two great big management units here and here, 352 and 351 over here. So that gives us the flexibility if we have a really harsh winter to be able to close these deer management units to hunters and open them when we've had a fairly mild winter and deer populations are doing well. The northern part of the Upper Peninsula where you see white, that's closed to antlerless harvest in all deer seasons this year. So this purple area here, again, you need a special access permit. The drawing for those access permits was in August, and all of those permits have been distributed, but in the future, you can apply for an access permit to be able to hunt in these two deer management units. There were 1,000 permits available in each of these deer management units this year, and it'll likely be similar next year unless winter ends up being really harsh, and those quotas may change next year. Once you have your licenses and you've determined which deer season that you're going to be hunting in, this chart is really going to help you understand what types of deer you can harvest with your particular license type. Obviously, with an antlerless deer license, you're going to harvest an antlerless deer. You can do that in any deer season that's open to antlerless harvest. And that's all seasons. The light blue area that you see up here, like I mentioned before, this is the white area that was on the map before. So this area is closed to antlerless hunting. So only bucks can be harvested in this area here. So if you're hunting on a regular deer license, you can take a deer, a spike or better. So a deer with antler points that are 3 inches or longer, or anything above that. So 3 inches or longer. On a deer combination license, you're a little bit more restricted in what you can harvest in the Upper Peninsula. You get 2 tags with your deer combination license. And on your regular tag, you can harvest a buck with 3 points on a side. On your restricted tag, you can harvest a deer with 4 points on a side or better. So 3 points or better, 4 points or better. And then you can tag that deer with either your regular or restricted tag based on the number of antler points that it has. It doesn't matter which order you use those regular and restricted tags in. If you harvest an 8 point on your first day out, use your restricted tag on that 8 point. And then if you get another 8 point the next day, you can use your regular tag on that 8 point deer. In this red area here, this is our chronic wasting disease surveillance zone in the Upper Peninsula. We've had 1 incidence of chronic wasting disease in Dickinson County. And so we're monitoring that area to see if there are additional cases up there. Luckily, we haven't found any since 2018 when the first index case was found. Hopefully we won't find any more cases, but we definitely want hunters to harvest deer in that area And so this area is the most liberal in the Upper Peninsula for deer harvest. You can take a buck or a doe on a deer license or a deer combo license in this red area, the CWD surveillance area. And then you can take a spike or better during the firearm and muzzleloader seasons and the archery seasons as well on your deer or deer combo license. No need to stick to that 3-point and 4-point regular and restricted tag. So these charts are very, very helpful in understanding what you can harvest and where depending on where you're hunting in the state. This is the Lower Peninsula chart. You know, same thing, you read it the same way. Things are a lot more liberal in the Lower Peninsula. We have a lot more deer, and deer are less impacted by winter severity in the Lower Peninsula. So harvest is much more liberal down here. Harvest regulations are more liberal. Now, this started last year, and it's a great value for hunters. You can harvest a buck or a doe on your deer or deer combination license in the entire Lower Peninsula. So it's up to you what you want to harvest on either your deer license or your deer combination license, either a buck or a doe. Now, if you are harvesting a buck, there are some places in the state that do have antler point restrictions in place. If you're hunting in this 3-county area here that's dark brown, Mecosta, Montcalm, and Ionia, you do need to harvest a buck that's got 4 points or better on a side. Now, this area is part of a study on antler point restrictions in disease areas. And it's part of a research study. This will likely be the last year of this research study, but researchers are looking at the impact of antler point restrictions on buck harvest and how that impacts disease spread. So in those 3 counties, you can only harvest a 4-point or better on a side. In the northwestern part of the Lower Peninsula, they also have antler point restrictions in place. So on a deer license, you'd need to take a buck that's a 3-point or better. And on a deer combo license, a regular tag, 3 points or better, restricted tag, 4 points or better. The folks in this area voted on antler point restrictions, and they decided they wanted to have those in place up there. And we did a survey with those folks, and they voted to have antler point restrictions in place. So with the Natural Resources Commission, we did implement that probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. So this chart will be very, very helpful for you as you go out in the field and to understand what you can harvest on which license during which season. So like I mentioned before, our state is divided into 3 hunting zones. We've got the UP, tip of the mitt, and lower part of Michigan. There's also this blue line here. This is the limited firearm deer zone. Now, as you know, the southern part of Michigan is heavily populated. So there are restrictions to what types of firearms you can use during the deer hunting season in these southern counties. If you're hunting with a firearm, you can use a shotgun south of this blue line. You can also use a rifle, but the rifle needs to be 35 caliber or larger. And all of this information is spelled out in the Hunting Digest in detail, but there's a certain case length and a certain style of ammunition that you can use to hunt with a rifle in the limited firearm deer zone. This is sometimes called the shotgun zone too. But primarily folks use shotguns down here and then 35 caliber or larger rifles for the deer seasons. If you're north of this line, you can use rifles with a smaller caliber because these parts of the state are a little less populated than southern Michigan. In the Hunting Digest, you'll see a hunting hours table and a map that looks like this. For deer hunting, hunting begins 30 minutes before sunrise and ends 30 minutes after sunrise. There's a table that tells you when you can start hunting and when you should finish hunting for the day. If you're caught hunting outside those hours, of course, you can be penalized and ticketed by our law enforcement division. So you want to make sure you're watching the time and hunting within daylight hunting hours. Now, this hunting table is for Zone A. That's the eastern kind of sunrise part of the state. So if you're hunting here in the central part of the state, you'll need to add 6 minutes to all the times in this table to tell you when you can hunt. If you're over here in time zone C, you're going to need to add 12 minutes and 18 minutes over here. If you're hunting in the central time zone, you'll have to do more fancy calculations to determine when you can hunt in those areas, as the central time zone is 1 hour behind us, right? I always forget. So subtract an hour, add an hour, I don't know. Anyway, you'll have to do those calculations if you hunt in that part of the Upper Peninsula. Safety zones. So there are safety zones in place to prevent any sort of accidents with hunters. So you need to be 150 yards or 450 feet from any occupied structure. So that's a house, a business, a barn, a garage, a shed, a ticket booth, anything like that. So any building that could potentially have people in it is considered an occupied structure. If you're hunting with a firearm, you need to be 450 feet from any occupied structure in order to hunt. Now, if you are hunting on your own property, you can hunt within your own safety zone. So if you would like to sit on the back porch and hunt deer, you can do that. I actually had a friend who used to do that. You can do that. That's up to you. You can also hunt within your neighbor's safety zone, or if you're hunting on a friend's property, you can hunt within their safety zone with written permission. So they need to say, this person has permission to hunt closer than 450 feet to my house, or something like that. If you're hunting with archery equipment, there is no safety zone. So you can hunt up close to an occupied structure or far away with a bow and arrow. I should mention that not all private lands are open to hunting. Like I mentioned before, I live in a city where hunting is not allowed. So you may have similar ordinances in your city. So you'll want to check with your local township or city to see if hunting is allowed within city limits or township limits, and where in your area hunting might be allowed. You can hunt on private land as long as hunting is allowed in your area. You can hunt on your own land or with permission on someone else's land. You can hunt on public lands. We have many, many state game and wildlife areas here in Michigan. We also have state forest lands, state recreation areas. There are a few state parks where you can hunt, but for the most part, if a state park is called a state park, that generally means hunting isn't allowed there. If it's called a state recreation area, generally that means that hunting is allowed there. There are usually places on state parks or state recreation areas that are closed to hunting, like campground areas or day use areas, places where people tend to congregate and gather at that park. So there may be places that are off limits to hunters in those recreation areas or parks. So you'll want to check with the park office to make sure that you're hunting in a location where it's okay to hunt. You can find public lands that are open to you for hunting at michigan.gov/myhunt. That's an application that you can use to find public hunting land here in Michigan. It's a really handy app. We also have some hunting access program lands. These are private lands that we kind of lease to folks, and they offer private land hunting opportunities to hunters. They're on a first come, first served basis. You show up at the property. There's a self-registration box that you use to sign in to let the landowner know that you're there for the day. And then you go out into the field and do some hunting on that person's property. You can find a list of properties at michigan.gov/HAP. And then finally, there are commercial forest lands available where you can hunt. These are privately owned forest lands that are enrolled in this program, and they allow hunters onto the land for harvest opportunities. That's michigan.gov/commercial forest. When you're out in the field, you'll want to wear hunter orange so that you're visible to other hunters that are also hunting where you are. You must wear a hat, a cap, vest, jacket, or rain gear of hunter orange when you're hunting between August 15th and April 30th. So the hunter orange has to be visible from all sides of you. And if you're wearing hunter orange camo, 50% of your garment needs to be hunter orange with that camo mixed in. There are a few exceptions to that rule. If you are archery, deer hunting, you don't need to wear hunter orange. I would wear hunter orange while you're walking out to your stand or your blind. But once you get there, you can take the orange off while you're bow hunting. If you're hunting migratory birds, if you're hunting bear with a crossbow, if you're hunting certain predator species like fox, coyote, and a few other, bobcat, I believe, you don't need to wear hunter orange. Again, all of those details are in the digest. Got a frog in my throat. So do remember your hunter orange when you head out into the woods. Now, when you're taking your firearm with you in the car, if you have a firearm, it needs to be unloaded both in the barrel and the magazine and enclosed in a case or stowed in the trunk, whether your vehicle is parked or stopped or moving. This is in motor vehicles and also snowmobiles. If you're in an ORV, you need to have that firearm unloaded in both barrel and magazine, enclosed in a case, or have some sort of trigger housing mechanism on it to keep it from accidentally firing when you're transporting that firearm. If you're hunting with a crossbow, a slingshot, or a bow and arrow, they need to be unloaded and uncocked, enclosed in a case or in the trunk when that vehicle is operated on these various places. Same thing when you're traveling in an ORV. So there are a few exceptions when you don't need to have a weapon cased or in a trunk. If you're hunting with a standing vehicle permit, this is a permit for hunters with disabilities. You don't need to have that firearm unloaded or cased if you're hunting from an ORV or a snowmobile or something like that. And those details are spelled out in that standing vehicle permit. If you're carrying a pistol with a concealed pistol license, you also do not need to have that locked in the trunk or enclosed in a case while you're transporting your firearm. When you do harvest a deer, after you calm down a little bit, but immediately after harvesting, you're going to want to tag your deer. So you'll take your knife and notch your tag with the date that you harvested the deer. So you'll come over here on the side to the month. Let's say you harvest a deer on November 15th on opening day of firearm season. You'll cut a little V out of the November here. You'll notch your tag there. And then down here, you'll notch the first digit here. So the 15th, your first digit would be 1. So you're going to put a notch right there. And then come over here to the second digit. You're going to notch a 5 right here. And then you'll come up here and notch out the sex of the deer that you harvested. Now this is an antlerless tag. So on this tag, you would notch whether it was a female or a button buck, a male. So you can notch out whether it's a male or female. On a regular or restricted or regular deer tag, you're also going to have over here on the side antler points. So if you harvest a male, you'll then come over here and notch out the number of points on each side. So maybe you had a 5 point with 2 points on one side and 3 points on the other. You'd notch that out on the side over here. Okay. So you're going to take your tag and fold it over a zip tie or a wire or a cord, and you're going to want to fasten your tag really securely to the deer. There are a few places that most people affix their licenses. They might tie it to the antler. They also will sometimes come up with a knife through the jaw and then kind of string the wire or the cord through the jaw of the animal, so it's really securely attached there. Or sometimes they use the tendon on the back leg and kind of take their knife and cut behind that tendon and then tie the tag to the deer on the hind leg. We have no preference where you put it, but you'll want to make sure it's really tightly affixed on there and that it can't blow away in the breeze when you're driving down the road with your deer on your tailgate or whatever. So you have to keep that tag on the deer until you submit it to a processor or a taxidermist or until you butcher the animal yourself. When you're transporting your deer, you can transport your own properly tagged deer, and you can also transport another person's properly tagged deer as well. You don't want to destroy the identity or evidence of the sex of the animal. With a deer, that's pretty easy as long as the antlers are attached to the head, or if you've taken the antlers off the deer, keep the antlers with the deer so that officers can easily see the sex of the animal. If you drop your deer off at a processor before going home, the head of the animal and the kill tag needs to stay with the animal until you get it to the processor. Most people just take the entire carcass there. When you get it to the processor, they're going to lop the head off. They'll ask you if you want the head back. If you don't, they'll throw it in the dumpster. If you do stop at a DNR check station, and we'll talk about those in a couple minutes about how to use a DNR check station, you'll need to get a disease tag receipt, and you'll want to hang onto your kill tag, make sure it's in your possession after you leave the check station. Those two things need to be in your possession with the rest of your deer to show that you are having that deer tested for chronic wasting disease. And then from there, you can take your deer to a processor, or you can butcher the deer yourself. Now, if you hunt in Montcalm County or in portions of Ionia and Kent counties, which are our main chronic wasting disease counties in Michigan, there are special rules and restrictions about taking deer outside of those counties. So ideally, if you harvest deer in those counties, they stay in those counties. You take it to a processor right away within that county, and then you're all set. Or you take it home and you process it at home in Montcalm County or Ionia or Kent. The reason is we don't want people, taking a deer carcass from Montcalm County back home to Wayne County, improperly disposing of the carcass, and there's the potential for chronic wasting disease to potentially get into the soil, potentially affect deer from there. So we want to keep those carcasses kind of contained to chronic wasting disease areas. So if you hunt in those areas, you can take your deer carcass directly to a processor. You can detach the deer head and take it to a taxidermist. But if you're moving it outside the county, you need to have that deer as deboned meat. You can quarter the deer, making sure that none of the spinal column or head is attached to the deer. You can take antlers out of the area, antlers attached to a skull or a skull cap, cleaned of all brain or muscle tissue. You can take hides, upper canine teeth if it's an elk, but you're not going to be taking an elk in any of those counties, or a finished taxidermist mount out of that area. So be sure you're familiar with those regulations before you move a deer carcass out of those areas. At a DNR deer check station, DNR biologists are going to get some information from you about your deer harvest. They're going to ask you whether you harvested your deer on public or private lands. They're going to ask you the date that you harvested your deer. They're going to take some measurements from your deer. They're going to measure the antlers. They're going to get an age on your deer. They're going to look at the teeth, and with deer, teeth wear down in a very predictable pattern over time. So biologists can tell how old a deer was by looking at the teeth. And so they're going to record the information that they get from you into their iPhones. This photo is a little bit old. We don't use these machines anymore, but they're going to get that information into the iPhones. And if you're submitting your deer head for testing, they're going to ask you for specific location information about where you harvested your deer. So they're going to ask for the township, range, and the section where you harvested your deer, and they can help you determine those things on a map when you're there at the check station. And from there, they'll take your deer head for testing, and they will you can check the DNR website, and the receipt that they give you once you've turned your heads in has that website on it. You can check that website to see what the results were for your specific disease test. There are a couple places in the state where we really need deer heads for testing. The northeastern part of the state, where we have bovine tuberculosis, we have a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. Department of Agriculture that says we need to harvest we need to test a specific number of deer each year for bovine tuberculosis in those areas. So we really need deer heads from hunters in those areas. And then also in chronic wasting disease areas, we'll need deer heads to be able to determine where in the state that disease exists. Now, if you harvest a really nice buck that you don't want to have tested, that's fine. There are a couple things you can do. Some taxidermists will pull lymph nodes on your behalf and will submit those to the DNR. You can also pull the lymph nodes on your own. And we do have a video at michigan.gov/CWD that walks you through how to pull those lymph nodes yourself to have those tested for chronic wasting disease. If you harvested your buck in an area where we haven't found CWD and you don't really want to have your deer tested, you don't have to. That's perfectly fine. We are starting a new process of moving around the state to determine where chronic wasting disease might be in Michigan. The blue counties and the gray counties are counties where we have detected chronic wasting disease in Michigan. So there are 9 counties so far where we have found it. This year, we're starting a process of moving around the state to determine if there are other places where the disease might exist. So we're starting with southern Michigan, these southern 3 tiers of counties. Next year, we'll likely move into the Thumb and Saginaw Bay area, then probably western Michigan, then tip of the Mitt, then the Upper Peninsula over the next 5 years. So we're kind of systematically looking for chronic wasting disease around the state. If you live in an area that's colored kind of this ivory, light yellow color, or this blue color, you can bring your deer head into a DNR check station. October through January, we'll do a CWD test for you for free, and get those results back to you as quick as we can. If you're in these gray counties, these are places where we have identified the disease. We know it exists. We know it exists, especially in these 3 counties, in pretty good numbers. So we're not really looking for more samples in those areas because we know there's disease there. If you hunt in those counties, those gray counties, testing is available to you through the DNR from November 15th through November 18th only. If you harvest your deer outside that time frame, or you know, if you harvested one earlier in the season, you can submit it to a USDA lab. We have a couple of labs, one at Michigan State University, one in Wisconsin, and you can send either your whole deer head or your lymph nodes to those disease labs, and they will help you get that deer tested for a fee. If you're in any of these white counties, same thing. You can get your deer tested if you would like, for peace of mind, but you can only do that through a USDA approved lab. Now, the volume of deer heads that we get into our disease lab can be extremely large. We pride ourselves on testing a lot of deer heads each year. So because of that, we aren't able to test everyone in the state, unfortunately, all the deer heads in the state. So you can use other participating labs for that service if you would like. All right, and this is our bovine tuberculosis area up here in northeastern Lower Michigan. We also occasionally get isolated cases in other parts of the state where we find TB positive cattle herds. And so we do some isolated testing there as well. But these are our primary counties where we need to get samples from hunters. So if you do hunt in those areas, we hope to see you at a check station. And when you do visit a DNR check station, you're going to go home with a successful hunter patch. So these are a collectible item that people really love. And so when you do submit your deer head at a check station, you'll get one of these patches as a thank you for helping us out with that surveillance. New this year, so if you harvest a deer this year, you can report your harvest online. So this is a new service that's coming on this year. It is voluntary this year. There's a chance that it may become involuntary or mandatory in the future, but it is voluntary to start with. So starting on October 1st, all deer hunters can report their harvest online. It's going to ask you similar questions to what I just talked about at a check station. It'll ask for your location where you harvested your deer, whether it was male or female, the date of harvest, the county, all those kinds of things. And the information that we get through this online harvest reporting system helps us to understand how many deer are harvested each year and helps us manage the deer population in Michigan. Historically, we've used mail surveys to help us understand, so kind of a self-report. Hunters are mailed a survey and they write, yes, I harvested 2 deer this year, a doe and a buck. So this will give us kind of more real-time understanding of what people are harvesting, and hopefully will give us a more accurate picture of what people are harvesting here in Michigan. That's not to say that the harvest report wasn't accurate. It's definitely an accurate way of estimating harvest report or deer harvest. So when you go to harvest your deer, you can visit the website at michigan.gov/DNR harvest report, and you can fill out all the information, and it takes about 5 minutes, really, really quick to do. And then you will have helped us to better manage the deer population in Michigan. Finally, I wanted to remind you of this great opportunity that we have. So when you pick up your deer license, you may also want to grab an application for the Pure Michigan Hunt. The Pure Michigan Hunt gives folks an opportunity to win all of the limited license hunts that we have here in Michigan. So that's an elk hunt, a bear hunt, reserved waterfowl, spring and fall turkey. So it's a really great package. Plus you get about $4,000 worth of prizes with the Pure Michigan Hunt. We pick 3 winners each year. So if this is something that you're interested in, and we encourage you to grab that application when you get your deer license. You can buy as many of these Pure Michigan Hunt applications as you like, and all of the money that we raise through sales of the Pure Michigan Hunt applications go to fund conservation and habitat work here in Michigan. So we hope you'll grab a few Pure Michigan Hunt applications when you're buying your licenses this year. So with that, I will ask if there are any questions. Looks like the chat is pretty quiet.
Thanks so much, Holly. I'm going to turn off the recording. So